Welcome to the House of Brand, where we help unleash the true potential of your brand. If you're a business owner, leader, or C-suite executive and you're ready to scale your business to new heights, you're in the right place. I'm Torey and Aaron, your guide in turning your brand into a strategic advantage for your company. In each episode, we get straight to the heart of what it takes to build a brand that drives growth, that shapes culture, and fuels your marketing efforts. So let's get started. Hey everybody, welcome to episode 2 of a 3-part series about positioning. I'm Torey. I'm here with Aaron. We're both with Brandcraft. We're a marketing agency based out of Washington State. If you haven't caught the first episode, try and check that out. Go see if you can find that. In today's episode, in part 2 of Positioning for Success, it's about your unique value proposition and why that's important. And we'll still be diving into some other areas of positioning and also ending with maybe like how you could write one just so you can, so people can get an understanding of how to do it. Although our third episode will really be, hey, here's some techniques for you and your team to write one on your own. Mm-hmm. So that's what we'll be doing. So positioning specifics and how we write a positioning statement. I'm going to read one off, which is like our blank template that we use. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of different templates for this out there on the interwebs. Like for instance, that's the definition of unique value. This is one though that we've had around. It's a standard one that we use.
Yep.
I think maybe we got this from HubSpot to begin with. Do you remember?
I don't know. It's just the one we've always used.
But we downloaded it and we just started modifying it. And then through customer use over and over, we've kind of changed it a bit, but not a ton. Mm-hmm. To the point where it's still very simple. But it works. So I'll read it, and then we'll put an overlay of this over, so you guys should be able to see this as we're talking. There's blanks basically here, and so I'll read them as, for instance, company name provides. That really means you fill in the company name, but company name provides the target market, which you define, with a unique business or product delivery, which is your UVP, your unique value, that results in, that creates, whatever it is, something of benefit to the client. So either it's more integrated, it's faster, it's better, it's stronger, it's cheaper, it's quicker. You define what that is, but really it's about the fact that we're going to tell you like what you're going to get, and we do that better than any other your business line, your niche market,
industry,
something that's the same. Mm-hmm. And then we back that up. So then we have these 3 important statements. We do this by pillar 1, pillar 2, and pillar 3. That's it. That's the end of the positioning statement. Mm-hmm. And it's tough. And I think in this stage, I want to move to a conversation that I know you and I will have a lot to talk about, and maybe skip past some of the other things I wanted to talk about, because I think this is so important, which is we always say you should be able to guide the company based on this positioning statement. Mm-hmm. And so that's why it's important that executives and people that are in charge of guiding the company are a part of this exercise. Mm-hmm. Because if they're not, often we don't get the depth needed in that positioning statement to make it work. So what do we mean by operating? I mean, it's clear that, or guiding, not operating. This is not an operating statement. It's not going to tell you what to do day to day. It's not going to tell you how to even run the company. That's not really what it's for. Instead, I think this is a part where you and I will probably have a lot to say. Sometimes defining what you're going to say no to has a lot more impact than stating all the reasons why people should say yes to you. And so we always like to, through this positioning exercise and then writing it and then having this idea that it's that short, it's our first step in helping a customer understand what to say no to. Mm-hmm. So what do you think about that, the whole idea of saying no, and then like giving examples of some of our customers, not by name or even specifics, but like, how has that been in the past where we've noticed that clients have a hard time saying no, or maybe even use us as an example?
Yeah. Us is probably an easier example, I think, mm-hmm. because for so long we tried to be so many things. Brandcraft, I mean, like we're a marketing agency, and we're a branding agency, and we're a design and we're a video company, and it's just so hard to like, who do you actually serve here, and how do you define? And we did a little bit of that, but yeah, a positioning statement is bare bones, and it's bare bones by design because of that. You don't want to make it so all-encompassing that it tells you everything, because then you don't know what to say no to. We need to say, we're actually going to be very specific, and we're going to get down to just the nitty-gritty. This is exactly what we do. This is who we serve. This is how we serve them. This is what the result we want to give them. And these are the ways that we do that.
Yeah, and I think that our customers, our current clients, probably valued that we had a full suite of services, right? So it's not about that. I think that's a very important qualifier, is what you're going to say no to doesn't mean you're going to tell a customer, a current client, no.
Right.
It means when we market, we're going to be very clear on where we sit and who we say yes and no to, and then guide those clients inside the office, inside our agency, using that measuring stick, using that positioning statement, say, okay, we know who our client is. Let's go try and get them. And
well, so that's why the client part of it needs to be more specific too than maybe the example that we gave when you just read the template alludes to. You can't just say like we serve business owners, for example, for us. Like we need to get a little bit more specific about what types of business owners. And that could even be, we've done it before, where it's not even so much demographic as it is psychographics. Like it's people who are interested in this thing, or they have this specific goal and need, because you know that's the goal that you can help them achieve better.
Yeah, good point. Because I think when people saw this, sometimes you want to paint yourself and read that statement very literally about, oh, you literally just fill in the, well, what is the old, I'm probably dating myself. In fact, I know I am, but there used to be a thing that it would ask you questions and you would fill it out, and at the end it would make some silly statement.
Oh yeah.
I can't remember what it was called, but my kids or my sisters and brothers would all do it, and we would do it every once in a while.
Right,
but,
like name an animal, name a color.
And,
right.
And now there's different versions probably on social and TikTok trends where people do it, but it's not exactly that in positioning. It's instead reading that and saying, what is the purpose of this statement? And you're right, it's not just to state we serve business owners, right? It's to say, okay, in what market, in what niche, at what size, at what scale, at what part in their growth phase. Sometimes it's male versus female. There's a lot of female, I would say, coaches out there that like to work with female founders. You can niche in so many different ways that I think it's important that you state that. Also, though, try and keep it as brief as possible, right? We're not going to try and explain the client in 4 paragraphs. We're going to try and explain them, in state who they are in a very short.
Yeah, or find what unifies them is kind of a good way to do that too, right? Like if you do, like we even, for example, there are quite a few different industries or ideal clients for us, but we've kind of tried to find a way that what's the unifying thing about all these different clients.
Yeah, so I think we are a good example of one that didn't take a niche market or say that we work with product brands or we work with this. We did a little bit of that, but instead we said, we work with clients at a certain phase, at a point in their growth in which they need our help. And I thought that was great for us when we made that realization that we didn't have to go down a niche market in that way.
Right.
In other words, you can have a vertical market. We went more horizontal. Like, hey, we can cross a lot of verticals if we say we're in this category here. And so I think that was really good for us. So saying no is what we're talking about. And I would say that I'll talk about what kind of no's that you should be aware of when you're trying to get people or clients or you to say no. And I think this, when we're trying to get clients in a positioning exercise to accept some of these no's, is when they start getting the most uncomfortable. So the first episode we mentioned clients have a tough time with some of this. I think it's this that's really driving a lot of it.
Yeah.
So operating the company or guiding the company, you must be able to say no when an internal initiative doesn't align with your position. We've all worked for bosses or companies before where there was no position. Everything was just, hey, today we're going to go chase this client or we're going to go doing this new service. And sometimes you're left scratching your head like, why would we do that? That's not what we do. That doesn't line up. And I think having a strong position and having that guidepost allows you to just move forward with that and instead find things that align with your position and find things that align with your direction. So second, you must be able to say no when a customer doesn't align with your position. Again, very difficult, mainly on the leadership and sales side when it comes to our customers. They don't even want to say things that will make some customers say no right away.
Yeah.
Well, I want to talk to them first. And it's like, well, I guess why would you think they're so nervous about that? The second no, which is you must be able to say no when a customer doesn't align with your position.
I mean, are you talking about leaders or are you talking about sales teams?
Yeah, I think our customers in general, all the way from leadership down to sales, and maybe you're right, maybe their opposition to it differs along that scale.
It depends, because I think some people have a benefit to it, and I think there's some salespeople that don't this is a whole different topic on brand, but I think if they don't, salespeople might not necessarily want to align with that position. They don't care as much because they just want whatever revenue they're going to get, that little kickback they're going to get off of the commission.
Yeah.
So for them, I think that's a pushback. And I think the other thing is just, I don't know. I think it's just general fear, the same as anything. I think you're just scared of losing. I think everyone wants to grow the business. I think you're scared of losing opportunities. I think what you think you're doing is losing an opportunity, when what you're actually doing is probably stagnating yourself. On a leadership side, I mean, like if you're scared to say no to a client that isn't really a client you want, I think you're probably scared that like you're turning down an opportunity. You see it as an opportunity, which is great, but if it's not the right opportunity for you, you're actually just going to put yourself going down the wrong path, and it frustrates your teams. It leads to a lot of other issues later.
Yeah, I think I try and give people this advice in so many different areas, but something isn't ever a thing until it's a thing. So I've given the example before, I think on this podcast, or my first one, about death, which is a very grim way to talk about it. But nobody's really gone from your life until they're gone. So even taking care of somebody for a long time and you know they're going to die, they're not really gone until they're gone, that one point in time in which they're gone. But on this stage, it's like you're never going to slowly transition to the clients you want until you make that decision, until that point happens in which you say, our messaging and the way we talk to people and the way we onboard them and the way we sell them and the way that we think about ourselves from this point forward is completely different. That's really the only stage in which it will happen. And I think we might be a good example of that, because I think we thought for a certain period of time that, and by the way, we've been very successful at scaling. We've been, successful at bringing clients in that we want. But we also reached a point in which scaling further, it was slowing down, because we weren't reaching as many of those people that we wanted to bring in the agency, which is why we started to look at the rebrand. And why we then said, okay, who are we going to say no to, and how do we say no to them? And then we've thought already that we could even do a better job of stating some of this on our website and other areas, of really honing that down. So you always have, all of this is always a work in progress, but we're on the concept of saying no. So the third one, you must be able to say no to things that don't appeal to your target audience. And that is, again, part of your marketing, part of your, I think one thing that you really have to be, and you have to live if you're going to own this position in the market, is you're going to have to own that everything you do really matters. So I'll give an example of us again, and then we can talk through this one. We have had different eras in our company where we've published content on social media, or we've written blog posts, or we've even made videos like this. Where now when we look back on it, we're like, well, if we knew that we wanted a very strategic type of customer, why were we publishing that content? You know what I mean? And I think it was because we decided, well, it's important and that's okay, or everybody would want to hear it, so we'll just publish it anyway. And I think now, if you look at that, most of the content that we've had going out in the last month, in fact, all of it, is so much more strategic and targeted to our target audience. And again, this goes back to what we talked about in the first lesson of this, which was we are taking our own medicine. And sometimes agencies have a tough time taking their own medicine, but we're required to. So what are your thoughts on this? All of these saying no's, what do you think, is this an important part of positioning? And maybe it's the result and not the work, but I think you have to have this headspace when you're into it and be able to accept this idea of saying no.
Yeah, I think it is something that comes up a lot in the positioning exercises we do. You talked about last time how we have to really challenge people a lot, and this is something we challenge them on probably the most, because you start positioning this, if you start trying to define this, and they'll say, well, what happens if somebody comes to us and they want this? And it's like, that's exactly right. The answer is no now.
Yeah.
And are you okay with that? I think it's easy to say until you say, okay, but now then what do we say? And we say, you say no. Is sometimes difficult to get your head around for all the reasons we talked about earlier,
Yeah, and the other part is, not to break the system right away, but you always have the opportunity, if you have a friend, if you have a client that you've had for a long time, if they're asking you to do something, you can always say yes, right? This isn't one of those things where as soon as this is written down and everyone's reading the positioning statement, it's just a chorus of no's too. Everyone's saying no, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, hey, we have a mission here, which is in marketing to attract the clients we want and say yes to them. That doesn't mean that we are out there and someone's like right on the edge and we're like, oh, we'll have to make a decision. Is it yes or no? It's like, just say yes, see how it goes, see if they're a good fit. So I think that the idea is to introduce to people enough things, both internally and externally, where they can qualify themselves out at times.
It's a qualifier. That's exactly what I was going to say. I think the truth is not so much we're saying it's a very binary, you either say yes or you say no situation. It's just, this is a way to now qualify. Does this apply? Is this really who we want? And it's more for marketing. Like when you start working in marketing later, or even in hiring, we've talked about that before too. It's just so you can know, like, are we going after the right person? So that way you're not spinning your wheels every day talking to everyone. You're saying no before you target, if that makes any sense. You're deciding, we're going to say no to these, we're going to say yes to this, and we're going to target this. So that way, when those people show up, they're more often than not people you say yes to.
Right. So some examples of this, I would say, ways that you say no without saying no, because that does happen too, is if you look at home services, so let's say it's roofers, let's say it's painters, landscapers, whatever it is. Let's say a roofer comes to your house, someone that's very busy, someone that has a great reputation. They have a good backlog of work. They don't need a lot of work. Typically, the way they say no is by never varying on price, right? Mm-hmm. So that you come and you get a bid from them, and they say it's $15,000 to do your roof, and that's it. Basically, we would love to work on it. It would be great. We can get you in the mix. I hope you sign it, but that's it. Right. The sell is that's the price, and we're not going to negotiate on it. Compared to that person just in startup phase or trying to establish where they are, who they deal with, who might say, well, yeah, I'll do it for half that, or I'll do it for, you know what I'm saying? And then they get themselves in trouble, which is all of that's a part of the brand, what you charge, like how you react to that. And so that's home services. I can think of, let's try another one off the cuff, like attorneys. How could attorneys maybe position themselves? I think it would maybe be the same with price. It could be maybe with only taking certain cases, like if the case situation isn't what you want, that you may not take it. There's many different ways. Professional services are much more difficult. It gets really nuanced about how do you qualify people out in that sale process. Ours often is cost. Though. We'll have that conversation pretty early with clients and kind of let them self-qualify and decide whether we're a good fit or not, but that's not the only thing. The other thing is like maybe what stage of the company they're at.
Yeah, I think even it could be on our side, it could be time limits. I think there's some clients that say, look, I need a website in 2 weeks, and we're just not the people for you to do that. We're not going to drop everything. We believe in quality. There's a certain level of quality we're always going to uphold, and we're not going to put out something that's shit just because you're in a hurry. That's a qualifier. If you're the kind of client that doesn't mind getting shit because you just want it fast, then you should go to someone else. You can try Fiverr. But it's just that's not us.
Yeah. We've had potential clients come in also who aren't really on board with our process or the way we do it.
Right.
And like, well, can't you just, and as soon as that comes out, they're about to say something which isn't the way that we like to work, right? Can you guys just do X? I don't need all of the rest of this. And it's just a sign, it might not be true. It's just a sign that maybe there's not a lot of trust there in either what we're providing. We're not really looked at as a consultant. And so all of you guys out there, when you're positioning your company, have to think about all of that. Like what kind of customer do we want? Who are we going to say no to? How do we want clients to say no to us? Because we'd prefer if they did that, if they didn't think we were a good fit. And so the saying no, I think, is a really important part of the discussion. I dreamt up an example of a company, actually a problem set.
Okay.
And for you guys watching, Aaron doesn't know about this because the version I sent him doesn't have this in it. So this is not a test, but I'd love to have you react as we go through it. So I'm using myself as an example.
Okay.
Okay. Myself, and I am myself. I'm describing to you the last few years of what we had to go through as we scaled our agency and as we grew it and things like that. Okay. So throughout growing our agency, Brandcraft, we have had a business law attorney throughout the life of our whole business. And they've been invaluable in certain situations as we started to scale. But during the most critical situations, I think our attorney, when they're involved, I know I would ask a lot of questions of where they would kind of say like, well, that's not really what we do. You know what I mean? But when you're in critical situations, let's say whether it's maybe doing an acquisition or even something simpler, just doing some contract updates or things like that, I always have in my mind, like I'm talking to someone here, our business attorney, that talks to people like me all day long. other business owners. He's probably had this situation several times. Like there's some, and I'm like, I just want to ask you, you've seen this, you tell us what we should be doing here. And there were, sometimes they're like, well, it's not our job to tell you what to do, or, you know what I'm saying? And I agree with him. But at times I found myself that I wanted more. I wanted that advice at that particular time. And I wanted to navigate those problems while we were putting all the time into the legal requirements. Like, why not figure all of this out? All of it might mean, regardless of what the document says, which is the legal part, what should we do? Not what, not that we write, but what should we do here in a situation? Is this valuation good or is this valuation bad? Is this, should we give our client a 90-day opt-out, a 60-day opt-out, a 30-day opt-out? And the attorney just wants to know, well, which is it? Is it 30, 60, or 90?
Right.
And then you have to just tell them, okay, this. So again, this is fine because this is what their job is, right? Is to protect you and write the document that says what you want it to say.
Right.
So now I've just described, though, I think, a position in the market in which somebody could solve for. And so I wrote a positioning statement for it.
Okay.
I backed it in. I said, okay, if I have a need, if a company came along that filled that need, I would want to hire them. And so here's an example of something maybe that it might exist, it might not. I don't know. I didn't go look. I bet it probably does. And I called this attorney firm Acme Attorneys. And I wrote a positioning statement that I think you would probably improve upon, judging by what you just told me prior. But so this is a company positioning statement that now is going to solve that problem for me. So Acme Attorneys, name of the company, provides business owners. That's the part where I think you would probably say, well, you could probably define that a little bit better. But Acme Attorneys provides business owners with specialized legal and coaching services under one roof. It results in better business solutions at the most critical times compared to any other business law attorney. We do this by partnering with business experts who can provide consulting to our clients, hiring attorneys with undergrad degrees in business or former business owners, and training our attorneys in communication techniques that reveal issues our clients may be having. So that's a positioning statement in which now this company, their unique value is specialized business, legal, and coaching services under one roof. So this is one of those things where this is maybe a little bit more than the burger concept with whether it's unique or distinct, but it could be very unique. I don't know if there's attorneys that also have like this business coaching side of it where you're getting both in one, but why do I think it would work? I think that would work because, again, our attorneys are involved at the most critical stages of everything that we're doing. So that's an example. And the only reason I didn't give any real examples here is two reasons. One is I think we've agreed, and we've talked about this in the introduction to our podcast, I really don't like giving examples of Fortune 500s, right? The Apples of the world or the Microsoft. And you read and whether their positioning statement is even valid, the ones you find out there online, I'm not sure. But they're just in a different phase and stage of a company compared to what we're looking to talk to here, which are stage 2 companies that are they're in that growth phase of trying to figure out how do we become maybe emerging mid-market or something like that. So what did you think of that? What did you think of the problem set and the solution? I'd love to hear what your opinion is of it.
You said it wasn't a test. It feels like it. So
I'm not a test.
So I'm going to take option C and say I recommend we need to do a naming exercise for the company is where I'm going to start.
Right. Well, okay. So that is actually a great point, and I agree with you. And I'll let you finish. But I believe a lot of clients come to us and they've done this homework of naming their company, of doing all these things, but really the naming should come after this.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah, the naming should be after your positioning statement, after you know your pillars, after you know a little bit more about your brand promise and all that, then name the company.
Right, because I was listening to it and I go, this is pretty good. But my first question, I'm like, okay, cool, what do you call it? That's almost what I wanted to ask you, but you already told me it's Acme, which tells me nothing about the company.
Right.
Yeah, so...
so terrible name.
Yeah.
So good point. Yeah, so I think that's a really good window and insight into why we write a positioning statement. We just kind of uncovered it, which is if you go down the right path, which is wait for all the sexy stuff, wait for the fun stuff. Yeah. Just hold off. Can we define some things as we move along? Then those things that we want to do, which most business owners really want, they really want the name, they want the business card, they want all the
tagline, all that.
Yeah, and a more mature company looks at that just as an evolution, so they're probably not as giddy. But if you look at like all of us that have either secured a domain and we're going to go start a company. It's always the same thing, right? Like, oh, I got the domain, I got a business card, and I got a logo and the colors. Check it out, right? I would say probably for a large portion of companies in the United States, that's where it ends too.
Yeah.
Like,
that's where almost every creative endeavor ends, actually. Like, even on the writing side, I write a lot of scripts and things. There's so many times like, oh my God, I've got the idea, and I start writing. I get about 5-6 pages in. I'll never finish that movie. I'll never finish that script.
So it just takes, I guess, so maybe what we, in our, in the positioning statement and writing that and starting with it, we're trying to provide some of that discipline to say, hey, let's set this foundation and structure up so that you will be successful and you'll have a guide on how you're going to scale this company and how you're going to run it without just going right to, here's the new look, here's the new logo, and all those things. So admittedly, while I maybe make a little bit of fun of clients and that's what they want to see, there's no doubt that we want to see it too.
Yeah.
There's no doubt that we want to see the messaging next to the logo with the new colors and all of those things.
But I mean, if I could put it in short term, I would say ideas are easy, solutions are hard. And I think you have to do this to get the solution, but everyone else wants to jump to the idea. I have this idea. Let's jump on it and let's get it out. And it's like, yeah, well, that part's easy. Everyone has ideas. Ideas are a dime a dozen. How you're going to do this, which leads into the pillars and the positioning statement, how are you going to make sure you do this and you stay consistent and you execute on it is the part that no one does the groundwork on usually.
Yeah, and when you get to that messaging phase, is your collection of ideas, is it all leading to one place, which is the position? Because I think you can also have a bunch of ideas and they're just like a shotgun approach. It's just going everywhere, but not leading anybody back. I think the great part about good brand and about good positioning and good pillars and all of the reasons to believe is that it gives the company, including the marketing department, that really good lens to say, I know how to create content now. And I can think of, in this business idea I came up with, Acme Attorneys provides business owners specialized legal and coaching services. Right now, I can think of at least 20 different scenarios in which I would want both a coach and an attorney helping me through something.
Yeah.
So that's 20 different messaging sets that probably could each have 5 different messages in it about how we help.
It also helps you define that client a little bit, the ideal client a little bit better too,
Sure.
Right? We start talking about, okay, what are the situations these people are in? Because it probably does start getting a little bit more specific if we start asking those questions. You know what I mean? Like, give me an example of times people would want this, and you start doing, okay, cool. Now you're sort of defining who you need to work with and who's looking for your services, better than just business owner.
Right, and so this one comes a bit into the one like we use at Brandcraft, which is it's almost a situational approach and not necessarily a vertical market. Again, like the way that we do it, which is, hey, we're not going to serve, although you could. I suppose if the market's big enough, you could go vertical and then niche out in a horizontal inside the vertical. I'm certain people do that. In fact, I know that on the marketing world, we see people out there that are like, well, we do marketing not only just for attorneys, but we do it for personal injury attorneys.
Yeah.
So they're now, taking a vertical and then taking a horizontal out of that one, which is an interesting way to do it and probably has some success in finding just that right customer.
Yeah, I would say where this one differs a little bit too, just a little bit though, is that you're pitching basically a new business idea. So the other thing is the questions we'd ask would be a little bit different this time too. Like, I think our typical positioning exercise, these are very established businesses they're fairly large businesses, in fact, like revenue-wise and like even team-wise sometimes, whereas this one that you're pitching feels like a brand new idea.
Good point.
So I wouldn't even know how to ask you, well, who do you normally serve? Who do you have the most success with? Would be a difficult, you know what I mean? You might not know the answer to that question yet.
Yeah, so Acme Attorneys, likely when they started, probably wouldn't do an exercise like this if we're being real.
Exactly.
They would just have a couple guys maybe sharing a beer and they're talking and they're like, hey, we should, you know what I thought? I had a customer tell me that he needed a coach or something like that. He goes, why don't we just provide it? Why don't we get a cut of the coaching service? And we know enough clients that we'll get. So those two people start talking and what do? They create the business card with the logo on it and boom, they're in business. Now they're attorneys and coaches.
This is very interesting because we just talked about saying no, but this is the opposite of that. This is a business being birthed out of saying yes to something no one else is doing.
Because I think what the normal process is that you kind of have to go through that phase and then scale up to a certain part where then you realize, crap, now I have to say no to some things. And I think that I don't think that is the way necessarily to start, though. Now, if you go back and you think about some of the big guys out in industry, though, many of them in San Francisco, but these big startup guys, I think they go through a lot of this positioning and understanding what they're solving for up front. And that's how they have like IPOs like 6 months after they launch, right? Huge companies from the start. You know, they understand this. They go through this, and they may not do it the way we do it, and they may not do it like in our process, but they have a really good idea of how they're solving for white space in the market. So part of positioning that we've done before that we don't do, we don't always do it. I mean, mainly because of our dealing with professional services, but you still can do it in professional services. But on the product side, the idea of white space mapping, where you've got two different axes with, there's so many different things you could position on. Let's say it's price and quality, right? That's one that you say, okay, well, on the x-axis we're going to have, or the y-axis we're going to have cost, and on the gosh, my math is so. Anyway,
X and Y.
On one axis it's price, on the other axis it's quality. And then you would try and map all those products out there. Okay, where does one, what's product? Well, yeah. And then you just go, okay, now, and you might have 4 or 5 of those, and you put it together. Eventually you find holes in the market. Well, nobody's solving for this or nobody's solving for that. And I think what somebody like a very good business person would say at times, well, our client doesn't know, you might know who I'm talking about. Our client doesn't really know what they want. So we're going to show them what they want, which is, that's another approach. I'm convinced that everyone's going to love this product, and they don't know it yet, but they're going to love it. And so we're just going to run with it, and we're going to just go create the product. And, you know, there's been some failures with that as many times there's been success with that. Okay, let's close this out by, I'm going to give a definition of unique value. And this is unique value proposition, which I think is an interesting statement. Almost what we use in the positioning is more of a unique value statement. It's not really a full, I would say, proposition of what we're going to do. But I think overall, if you look at the whole positioning statement, it is kind of more than anything a unique value proposition. This is what we plan to bring. But if you look up on Google, what is the unique value? And they'll say a unique value proposition is a statement that describes the unique benefit that a company, product, or service provides to its customers or clients. It explains how a company or its offerings can solve a customer's problem or meet their needs in a way that sets it apart from its competitors. So I think that's pretty good. That's a Google snippet that comes from ActiveCampaign. And I think that does a pretty good job of basically stating what it is. It probably doesn't do a good job of stating how difficult it is to write one.
Yeah.
Because, again, what a client or what a customer is required to do to actually write a great unique value is say no to a lot of other things that they want to say yes to. And that's why it's so difficult. So the unique value, and then I think now this conversation, why is it so important? And I think maybe you can just touch on that. Why do you think on the unique value side that when we look at that one simple statement inside of our positioning statement, which says this is our unique value, number one, why is that difficult, and then also so important to the future as we start to develop the full brand?
I would say because chances are you're not the only business in your industry. And so if you can't define what's unique about you, then what you're actually doing with your positioning statement, with your marketing, with everything that follows this, is you're marketing your industry and why you need your service, but not necessarily why you need that service from you. And I think that's something that actually we run into a lot. I think a lot of marketers do. It's usually the thing we have to weed out first in our brainstorming sessions even. We start going through and going, oh, why does someone need this service? And it's like, yeah, but it's actually not, it's not why would you need roofing, you gave as an example. It's not why do you need roofing. That's easy. We all know why you need a roofer. It's why do we need this roofer?
Right.
And that's, if you don't have that unique value, then you can't answer that question.
That's good. And then good lead in. So I'll follow up with that one and say, yeah. So when that roofer comes and says, hey, here's the proposal, and maybe it's 20% higher than a lot of its competitors, but yet for some reason this person is fully booked. And you look at that and you say, why? And you would say, okay, well, they're fully insured. They're very clean. When they come to a job site and leave, you can't see any trace that they were there. They promise to get in and out in 24, 48 hours.
Yep.
You go through all the list of things and you say, these are all benefits to the consumer. They're not benefits to the contractor.
Right.
So they don't message the benefits to the contractor, which is also by getting done in 24 hours or 48 hours, they make more money. they can get in and out of there and have a little bit more margin, right?
Yeah.
But yet they say, but that's also a benefit to the consumer. What a better benefit to have, and one in which the business or the company benefits from it and the client benefits from it. So that's great. So yeah, taking that and saying it's a unique value, and I don't know what the unique value of that roofer would be, but you'd find one and say, well, this is our approach. We're the X of the roofing industry, right? And that's the trick. Whether we could come up with that in in one episode like this, probably not. But with some time, we could. The other thing on the unique value is, I think one thing, and this is maybe a shout out to all those marketers out there that have had tough clients or had tough times in marketing, which is, I will tell you that when a client doesn't give you this information, it's really hard to dream it up on your own.
Yes.
So we've had clients come in. And we've all dealt with clients that they don't know where they're positioned. They don't know why they're better. They don't know all that. But yet their expectations of marketing are so high that, well, if I pay you, we should get like a 3 times return on investment or 2 times return on investment. And we say, well, like you said, unless we're marketing for a whole industry, in which case somebody's going to get the job, but it might not be you.
Yeah.
So we really need to be very unique in how we talk about you, and that unique value is important.
Yeah, unless you're a conglomerate. Milk. Who cares? Just buy milk. We just want to support dairy farmers.
Yeah.
That's not what you're doing, though, most likely.
Most likely not.
Yeah.
Although, I think maybe I've made an argument before when it comes to that there should be maybe a group of certain businesses that should just do that. Like, you can't individually market yourself, or you guys are choosing not to. Why don't we just market all of you guys together? You can just do a round robin and then pick. No. All right, bad idea, but one that, well, heck, if it works for
Acme
milk
law.
and almonds, then it should work for roofers.
Yeah.
That we'll just have a big group of people that serve these. So yeah, if we bring this back now and we look at that unique value statement, and we've talked about the unique value statement within our positioning statement. Sorry, I don't know if I described that right. We have our positioning statement, which we've shared with you guys, and the listeners have seen it. And then within that unique value statement, which is typically in that second sentence, there's that statement of unique value, could be in the first sentence. And then after that, those 3 pillars we haven't really talked about, and the importance of those 3 pillars that are basically a backup to say, we're going to tell you that's our unique value. And then we're also going to give you a hint by giving you 3 reasons why we know in our actions we're going to back that up. And here it is. Here's our 3 pillars. And so those 3, why don't you talk about when we write this? So this is a very unsexy statement, this positioning statement. It's pretty black and white, doesn't have a lot of emotion in it. It just states what we're going to do. But maybe walk people through, okay, but now that you have it, what comes later? And why do all these different things matter? And specifically, maybe just keep it on that unique value statement within the positioning statement, and also the pillars. Like, how does that come in later when we're branding?
Yeah, I think this is why all this is actually difficult, not just because it's not sexy, but because they all have to, you just said it gives you a reason to. We actually turn these into what we call reasons to believe. But that's because these pillars, that's really what they are. If I tell you this is what's unique about me, this is the value you're going to provide that you can't get from anyone else, you have to be able to back that up. And those pillars are going to be what backs that up. And that's super important, because when we turn those into reasons to believe, that means this is how we're going to tell the consumer at the end how you're going to deliver on that. This is a way to make them believe in the unique value that you provide. And that's and again, it speaks to the benefit for them, not the benefit for you. We're speaking to the benefit for them. But it starts with that proof.
Yeah, good point. So later, as this content turns from one of statement of who we are and what we do to a statement of your benefits, that's really the transformation that happens within the brand exercise. And that's a lot of what we work on behind the scenes and our clients wait for from us. And sometimes there's more interaction than others, but where we say, okay, we've learned a lot from you in our positioning work and now we're going to go uncover how we message this to the consumer, and it's pretty fun to bring it back to them and see how they react. And for the most part, I think they get it, and then sometimes we have to explain it a little and walk them through our process of how we came to that messaging. The roofer example is interesting because you could say, okay, we had a roofer and they have this one of their pillars is we're in and out in 48 hours. Let's say that is one of their pillars. And it is interesting because we kind of uncovered that when we were talking about it, which is their pillar and their reason for that might be because it's just faster. Like, and it's better for us, it's better for our employees, it's better for the neighborhood that we're not there for 2 weeks, that we can just get in and out. But when you and I write that for the consumer, it's all about the value to them. Why getting in and out in that 48 hours lets you get back to your own life, lets you have peace of mind that your roof is done, all the different reasons, right?
Yeah.
And so that's, I think, when we go to the reasons to believe, is that idea that these pillars are rewritten. Also, though, not much different with the unique value. We do use that later as well. Like, maybe uncover a bit of how that unique value comes into play when you're defining other things.
Yeah, I think overall, this whole statement, again, this goes back to why I said it's hard, because it's even easy to say why you're unique if you can't back it up too. The reason this is difficult work is because not only do we have to find what's unique, we have to find proof of that. We have to find those pillars to back it up. And I think, I'm forgetting your question a little bit, but I guess that the way I was gonna go to answer the question is because this positioning statement should be able to be turned into something that could be somewhat of an elevator pitch for your company. And so you need to have that unique differentiator and then those pillars to back it up. You could almost read this if you ran into somebody in the elevator, is the example, right? What do you guys do? You could read that positioning statement to them, and they should know clearly why you're special and why you're unique, and remember you versus your competitors, instead of saying, I'm a roofer.
And by the way, that elevator pitch, I've heard elevator pitches that are really good, and I've heard ones that are really bad. I think the good ones say a lot in a few words.
Yeah.
It's like I almost completely get why you exist in your company when you give me a great elevator pitch and you spend 15 seconds to 30 seconds on it. And after you say that, I'm like, I feel like I get exactly why you exist. Where others, either because they're being too grandiose or they're just like, yeah, we solve the biggest issues. Like, we have the best customer service. We have a combined 100 years of experience, and we do all that under one roof. And you're like, who cares?
Yeah.
I mean, really, who cares? Oh, okay. And then you walk away from that interaction, you don't remember any of it. So yeah, the unique value can certainly lead to that one, which is, I think we write that not every time, but sometimes for clients. We've called it not an elevator pitch, an elevator statement.
Yeah.
And the only reason I call it an elevator statement is to make customers okay with the fact that you don't have to be a salesperson. You're not going to pitch this out to everybody. But if you're having lunch with somebody and they ask, you just give them your elevator statement. Like, you've practiced it, you know it. The other is, though, like when we think about tagline and brand promise.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go. I forgot. Yeah.
Yeah. Tagline and brand promise are one of those that really are born mainly out of that unique value. And we sit and look at that unique value and we're like, okay, how do we expand that out? What concepts surround that unique value? What concepts, for instance, if it's about time, okay, what concepts out in the world talk about time or talk about, well, maybe it's color, or maybe it's value, or maybe it's whatever. But then we start to try and build these things together and say, dang, how would you message that? Like, what would a brand promise be? If this is our unique value, why, maybe it's even, why are we doing that? Why is that our unique value?
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's why for the customer, because that's still going to be what the promise is to your consumer at the end of the day. Is like, why is this time valuable to them? And yeah, the answer to that question, like you said, we get in and out, peace of mind, keep the roof over your head without you having to hear beat over your head. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm doing a bad job copywriting on the spot.
Well, I would say but I would say this. So let's say that, one of your brand promise was that you always saving you time and something like that.
Right.
Our promise is no matter what, we're going to save you time in your home repairs. That would be that is actually a great brand promise, but it's just one that you have to live by. That if you're going to introduce, you're doing roofing now, and if you're going to introduce electrical service, how do you ensure on the brand side that you're in and out and you're saving your customers time? Because as soon as you introduce something that isn't providing that brand promise, now the brand might get a little bit disassociated. Okay, well, great. I think that we have done a good job talking about unique value today. I hope you guys learned something. In our next, we are going to move all of this, which has been a lot of, hey, this is what we do and what you could do. And the next one is really going to be about how advice we can give to our clients when they need to write their own positioning statement. As we continue the series, we're going to walk you through to what happens after you get done with the positioning statement. What do you do with it? And again, walk you through all the different types of the brand elements that you need to do to create your own brand. So with that, thanks for watching, and stay tuned for part 3 of this series on positioning.